Thank you for being here today. I want to start with a truth that is simple but powerful. The life you're living now, the reality you're experiencing, is not determined solely by your circumstances, your bank account, your background, or your luck. It's shaped moment by moment by your frequency. Yes, your frequency. That invisible vibration of energy that radiates from your thoughts, your emotions, and your beliefs. Most people go through life unaware that they're transmitting energy into the world, and even fewer understand that this energy dictates what they attract, what they experience, and what they become. We're not just passive observers of our lives, we're energetic participants. And when we change the frequency we're on, we change the signal we send. That signal doesn't just echo into nothingness, it calls things back to us. It shapes reality, it creates the idea of scarcity, that there's not enough to go around, that we have to fight and struggle and compete for every crumb, is a frequency. It's a vibration based on fear, lack, and limitation. And many people live in that frequency daily, not because they choose to, but because they don't know there's another way. But there's another frequency available, a higher one, a frequency of superabundance, not just abundance, but superabundance. This is a vibration of overflow, of infinite possibilities, of grace, creativity, flow, and expansion. And it is available to every single one of us right now, not someday. Not when you finally get that raise or that relationship or that opportunity, but now. The first shift we must make is internal. Superabundance doesn't start in your bank account, your job, or your business. It starts in your awareness. It starts in your mind. What do you believe about life? About money? About success? About yourself? Most importantly, what frequency are those beliefs vibrating on? We've been taught that we need to do more to get more, work more hours, struggle harder, sacrifice more. And while effort has its place, there's a more powerful approach, aligning your frequency with the life you desire. Have you ever met someone who seems to effortlessly attract opportunities, money, love, and joy into their life? Someone who seems to be in the right place at the right time, over and over again? That's not coincidence. That's alignment. They're tuned in to a higher frequency, a state of receiving instead of resisting. They've moved beyond scarcity. They've stopped expecting the worst and started expecting miracles. And the universe responds to that energy. Let's talk about the frequency of scarcity, because many of us know it well. Scarcity sounds like I'm not good enough. There's never enough money. Things never work out for me. Why bother trying? Success is for other people, not for me. Scarcity is subtle. It hides behind logic. It masks itself as realism. But in truth, scarcity is a fear-based illusion. And like all illusions, it can be dissolved, not by fighting it, but by replacing it. Replacing it with a new signal, a new energy, one of openness, of trust, of worthiness, of knowing that you are connected to a source that is unlimited. So how do you change your frequency? You begin by becoming aware of it. Start paying attention to how you feel. Your feelings are your frequency meter. When you feel anxious, afraid, frustrated, or defeated, you're likely resonating with scarcity. When you feel inspired, grateful, loving, and excited, you're aligning with abundance. This is not about pretending everything is perfect. This isn't blind optimism. This is conscious creation, choosing to shift your energy in the face of challenge, choosing to raise your frequency despite your circumstances, not because of them. You shift your frequency by changing your thoughts. Yes, but more importantly, by changing your state of being. Thoughts are fleeting, but energy is deeper. You change your frequency by moving into gratitude. Not occasionally, but consistently. You change your frequency by letting go of limiting stories and replacing them with empowering ones. You change your frequency by acting as if your dreams are already on their way, not in desperation, but in faith. You speak a new language, not one of lack, but one of overflow. You stop saying, I can't afford that, and start saying, how can I make that possible? You stop saying, I never get the chance, and start saying, I create opportunities. Every time you do this, you're tuning yourself like a radio to a higher channel, a channel where your energy attracts new people, new ideas, new possibilities, and over time, life responds. It has to, because the universe mirrors back the frequency you radiate. You don't manifest abundance by wishing for it while secretly expecting to fail. You manifest abundance by becoming it, by living from it now, before the evidence shows up, before the money arrives, before the success is visible. You vibrate as if it's already here, and then you magnetize it. That's how powerful you are. That's how powerful frequency is. You're not a victim of reality. You are a transmitter of it. And when your signal changes, everything changes. But let's be clear, this is not just about money. Superabundance is bigger than that. It includes wealth, but it's not limited to it. Superabundance means having more than enough joy, more than enough health, more than enough time, more than enough love, more than enough purpose. It means living in a state where you don't just get by, you overflow. And here's the beautiful part. Superabundance isn't something you have to chase. It's something you align with. It's a frequency that's already here. You don't need to force your way into it. You simply tune in. Think of a radio station. The music you want is already playing. You just have to dial to the right frequency. The same applies to abundance. It's broadcasting all around you. When you stop transmitting fear, lack, guilt, and unworthiness, you start to hear the music. That's when life starts to flow. That's when synchronicities happen. That's when you meet the right people, find yourself in the right rooms, come across the right ideas, not because you forced it, but because you aligned with it. Let me tell you something else. The frequency of superabundance is not ego-based. It's not about proving anything. It's not about competition. It's not about climbing over others to get to the top. In fact, when you're truly in the energy of superabundance, you want everyone to win because you know there's more than enough for all of us. You stop living in comparison and start living in creation. You don't measure your worth by how much more you have than someone else. You measure your worth by how much light, love, and value you bring into the world. And you allow that to be reflected back to you in infinite forms: money, opportunity, wellness, love, joy, and peace. This frequency is generous. It gives freely, not out of obligation, but out of overflow. It gives because it knows the source never runs dry. It gives without fear of lack because it knows that giving is receiving. Now, does this mean you'll never face struggle, doubt, or pain again? No. Life is full of contrast. But when you're vibrating on the frequency of abundance, you handle challenges differently. You don't spiral into fear. You don't see setbacks as signs to give up. You see them as redirections. You see them as lessons. You stay rooted in your power. You keep your vibration high. And that's what makes all the difference. You rise above the noise. You rise above the fear. You rise above the old programming that said you're not enough. You reclaim your authority. You stop reacting to life and start creating it. Here's a radical idea. What if life was meant to be joyful? What if it was never about struggle and survival? What if we were conditioned into scarcity? And now, finally, we're waking up to the truth of who we are. Limitless beings, deeply connected to an infinite source. What if everything you desire is not just possible, but inevitable? When you match the vibration of it, that's not wishful thinking. That's quantum reality. Science is starting to catch up with what mystics and sages have said for centuries. Everything is energy. Everything is vibration. Everything responds to frequency. And when you operate from that truth, you stop chasing. You start aligning. You stop begging for breadcrumbs and start realizing you have access to the bakery. You stop shrinking to fit into scarcity and start expanding into superabundance. Now is the time to let go of the old story, the one that said you're not worthy, the one that said you have to struggle, the one that said dreams are for the lucky few. That story is done. You're writing a new one now, a story where you wake up with purpose, a story where you follow your joy, a story where you live in overflow, not because everything is perfect, but because your frequency is. From this day forward, you don't live by default. You live by design. You don't wait for proof to believe. You believe first, and then the proof comes. You don't play small to stay safe. The world around you is not just happening to you, it's responding to you. This is one of the most transformative realizations anyone can have. Your reality is not a fixed, unchangeable condition. It's a reflection of the frequency you emit. Everything in the universe, including your thoughts and emotions, carries a vibrational signature. That signature broadcasts out into the world, and the world in turn mirrors it back to you through people, situations, and outcomes. At any given moment, you are transmitting a signal through your mindset, beliefs, and emotional state. Whether you're aware of it or not, this signal acts like a magnet, drawing in experiences that match your inner world. If you're operating from fear, doubt, resentment, or lack, you tend to attract more situations that confirm those emotions. Life becomes a feedback loop. You feel lack, so you see more lack. You expect disappointment, and somehow it finds you. But the reverse is equally true. When you elevate your frequency to one of gratitude, joy, confidence, and trust, the energy you emit becomes magnetic in a completely different way. You start to notice things shift. People treat you differently. Opportunities appear where there were once only obstacles. Even challenges feel less intimidating because your response to them is no longer rooted in fear. What we often overlook is that the external world is not the cause of our inner state. It's the effect. The job that isn't fulfilling, the strained relationships, the financial stress, these are not the source of your unhappiness. They are the reflection of the frequency you're holding. If you want something to change on the outside, the first step is to change what's going on inside, not by suppressing how you feel, but by consciously choosing to shift your emotional and mental patterns. This isn't magical thinking, it's energetic responsibility. When you take full ownership of your inner world, you stop being a victim of your circumstances and start becoming a creator of them. You realize that your power doesn't lie in controlling the outside world. It lies in mastering your internal state and raising your vibration intentionally. Raising your frequency doesn't require massive action overnight. It starts with small, consistent choices. Choosing gratitude over complaint. Choosing hope over fear. Choosing presence over worry. When you shift your focus from what's lacking to what's already abundant in your life, you automatically start tuning to a higher frequency. Even your self-talk, those quiet internal conversations you have with yourself, are signals. When you tell yourself, I'm not good enough, things never work out for me, or I'll never be successful, you're programming your frequency with self-defeating energy. But when you shift that inner dialogue to something empowering like I'm worthy, I'm learning and growing, or I am open to receiving, the entire energetic tone of your life begins to shift. What's important to understand is that this is not about denial or pretending everything is perfect. Life has ups and downs. You will have moments of fear, doubt, and struggle. But the goal isn't to never feel low. It's to become so aware of your own energy that you don't stay there. You recognize the low frequencies as temporary, not your identity. And you take aligned steps, whether through breath work, meditation, journaling, or even a walk in nature, to lift yourself back into a frequency that serves you. The more you live in alignment with higher states of being, like love, trust, joy, and gratitude, the more you begin to witness external evidence of that alignment. Life starts to flow. Ideas come easier. Relationships improve. Money flows more effortlessly. You find yourself in the right place at the right time, not because of luck, but because of energetic resonance. So when you look at your life and see patterns you don't like, don't just ask, why is this happening to me? Ask instead, what frequency am I on that is attracting this? Because when you shift your frequency, your reality has no choice but to follow. Scarcity is not an absolute condition of the world. It is a mental and emotional state that is learned, adopted, and reinforced over time. From a young age, many of us are conditioned to believe that resources are limited, opportunities are rare, and success is reserved for only a select few. These beliefs often come from cultural narratives, family environments, media, and educational systems that unconsciously teach us to fear not having enough. We're taught phrases like money doesn't grow on trees, or you have to work hard just to survive, or you can't always get what you want. These statements may sound practical, even protective, but they sow the seeds of a scarcity mindset, one that sees lack instead of possibility and limitation instead of creativity. The message behind these ideas is subtle but powerful. There isn't enough for everyone, so be careful, be afraid, and hold tightly to what you have. The truth is, scarcity isn't hardwired into reality, it's programmed into our thinking. The actual world we live in is rich in potential, ideas, energy, and opportunity. Look at nature. Trees don't grow one leaf and stop. The ocean doesn't conserve waves. The sun doesn't limit its light to certain people. The natural world is abundant by default. It overflows. But when we disconnect from that natural abundance, when we start believing in limitation as our only option, we shift into survival mode. We stop dreaming big. We stop taking risks. We stop trusting. Scarcity is a learned fear that makes us operate from a place of contraction. It tells us to hold back, to compete, to compare. It makes us think someone else's gain is our loss. It says there's not enough love, not enough money, not enough time, not enough opportunity. And worst of all, it makes us believe we are not enough. But here's the liberating truth. If scarcity is learned, it can also be unlearned. It's not a permanent condition. It's a mindset that can be rewired, challenged, and released. It starts with awareness. Begin noticing the moments when you slip into scarcity thinking, when you feel jealousy, insecurity, or fear about the future. Ask yourself, is this truly about reality or is it a belief I've picked up along the way? You can start to shift this programming by choosing new beliefs, ones that align with abundance, trust, and worthiness. Instead of telling yourself, there's not enough to go around, you might say, there's more than enough, and I'm open to receiving. Instead of thinking, I can't afford this, you could ask, how can I create the means for this? Instead of fearing competition, you recognize collaboration as a path to shared growth. Changing this mindset doesn't mean you ignore real-world problems or pretend challenges don't exist. It means you stop viewing them through the lens of powerlessness. You reclaim your creative capacity to solve problems, build wealth, find new paths, and elevate your life. Not because you deny reality, but because you choose to engage with it from a place of possibility instead of fear. Scarcity thrives in silence and unconsciousness. It persists when we don't question it. But the moment you become conscious of it, you start to dissolve its power. You start to see that it was never the truth of the world. It was a filter you were taught to see the world through. And once that filter is removed, what's left is the real truth. The universe is abundant, and so are you. Superabundance isn't just a nice idea or a spiritual fantasy. It's a real, accessible state of being. It's not something reserved for the lucky few or for people who already have everything going for them. Superabundance is a frequency, and like all frequencies, it can be tuned into. That means you don't have to wait for external conditions to be perfect before you experience it. You simply have to shift how you're showing up energetically, emotionally, and mentally in your life. While scarcity is rooted in fear, control, and limitation, superabundance flows from trust, expansion, and alignment. It's not just about having more money, more success, or more material things, though those can be natural results of living in this state. Superabundance is about overflow in every dimension of your life. More peace, more purpose, more joy, more love, more clarity. It's an inner state where you feel connected to the infinite nature of life, where you stop operating from desperation and start operating from sufficiency and expansion. The powerful thing about tuning into this frequency is that it doesn't require outside permission. No one has to give it to you. You don't have to prove yourself worthy. You don't need a perfect past or an ideal situation. The frequency of superabundance is already here, now, all around you. It's just a matter of whether you're aligned with it. You align by changing your internal atmosphere. It starts with your thoughts, but goes deeper than that. It's about the energy behind your thoughts. Do you approach your day with resistance or with openness? Are you moving from fear of not having enough or from trust that life will support you when you show up with clarity and courage? These questions matter because your emotional tone determines your frequency. Superabundance is a feeling before it becomes a fact. It's a state you embody before it becomes something you can measure. That's why people who live on this frequency often experience effortless flow. Ideas come easily, synchronicities increase, resources appear, and the right people show up. It doesn't mean they don't take action. They do. But the action is inspired, not forced. It comes from a place of alignment, not anxiety. When you tune into superabundance, you stop being reactive and start being responsive. You stop looking outside for validation and begin trusting your own internal guidance. You no longer need to chase what you want. You attract it naturally because you've become a match for it energetically. The more you stay in this state, the more life meets you at that level. You can practice tuning into superabundance in small ways each day. It might be as simple as choosing gratitude first thing in the morning, even before anything good happens. It might mean saying no to things that drain your energy and yes to things that expand it. It might involve spending more time in nature, connecting with your vision, journaling your dreams as if they've already happened, or surrounding yourself with people who reflect the energy you want to embody. Remember, frequency is not fixed. You can shift it moment by moment. Superabundance isn't a one-time decision. It's a daily tuning process. You tune into it through your intentions, your focus, your emotional habits, and your willingness to believe that life is fundamentally generous. The more you live in this frequency, the more you realize it was never about earning abundance. It was always about receiving it. And the moment you stop trying to force things and instead become the version of you who is already living in abundance, everything begins to open up. Opportunities multiply. Resistance fades. Life becomes more graceful, not perfect, but profoundly aligned. That's the power of frequency. And superabundance is always just one energetic shift away. This is one of the most misunderstood yet foundational truths about energy, manifestation, and personal growth. You don't attract what you want. You attract what you are. On the surface, it might sound disheartening. After all, we all want good things, love, success, freedom, peace, abundance. But what many people don't realize is that the mere act of wanting something does not necessarily bring it into our lives. Wanting often comes from a place of lack. It says, I don't have this. Energetically, that frequency is very different from already being in alignment with the thing you desire. To attract what you want, you must first become the energetic match for it. That means embodying the feelings, thoughts, behaviors, and values of the version of you who already has what you seek. It's not about faking it or pretending. It's about aligning your internal state with the reality you want to experience. The universe is always reflecting your dominant energy, not your verbal requests. Let's say you want love in your life. You might say, I want a partner who sees me, respects me, and deeply loves me. But if deep down you don't feel lovable, or if you're carrying unresolved pain, or you've built emotional walls from past heartbreak, then energetically you're not open to receiving love. You're guarded. And so what do you attract? More emotional distance, more unavailability, because on a frequency level, you're still aligned with protection, not vulnerability and connection. Or take money. You might say, I want more financial abundance. But if you constantly think money is hard to come by, or I'm not good with money, or I'll never get ahead, then your internal state is one of scarcity. Even if you hustle, even if you visualize, the underlying belief system is vibrating lack. And what does lack attract? More experiences that reinforce lack. On the flip side, when you shift from wanting to being, your energy changes everything. You stop chasing outcomes and start aligning with them. You begin thinking, speaking, and acting as someone who already lives in the reality they desire. Want love? Be loving. Be open. Be vulnerable. Want abundance? Feel abundant now. Practice gratitude, generosity, and self-worth before the money comes in. This shift requires radical honesty with yourself. Are you waiting for your circumstances to change so you can feel happy, peaceful, or free? Or are you choosing to feel those states now, knowing they are the gateway to the external transformation? That's the work, and it's powerful. One of the most important aspects of this truth is that it puts the power back in your hands. You are not powerless, waiting for life to give you something. You are a co-creator, already shaping your reality with every belief you hold, every emotion you sustain, every choice you make. The external world is a mirror. It can't show you something different until you change what you're projecting into it. This doesn't mean you need to be perfect or feel good all the time, but it does mean that your dominant frequency, the state you live in most consistently, is what sets the tone for what shows up in your life. Occasional positive thinking can't override chronic fear, guilt, shame, or doubt. But when you begin to live from the energy of trust, joy, worthiness, and expansion consistently, that's when the real shift happens. So ask yourself, who are you being on a daily basis? What stories are you repeating? What energy are you putting into the world? What version of yourself are you embodying? Because you will not receive the life you want. You will receive the life that matches your frequency. When you become the kind of person who naturally attracts what you desire, not through effort or desperation, but through inner alignment, then the things you once chased begin to find their way to you, not as isolated miracles, but as a natural result of who you've become. Living in a high frequency, tuned into abundance and alignment, doesn't mean you'll never face difficulties again. Challenges are part of the human experience. They're not punishments, nor are they proof that something is wrong with you. The difference is when you're operating from a scarcity mindset, challenges tend to feel overwhelming, personal, and permanent. But when you're aligned with a higher frequency, when you're living from a place of trust, presence, and inner power, you meet those same challenges with a completely different energy. In a scarcity mindset, every obstacle feels like a threat. A delay becomes a dead end. A no feels like rejection. You take things personally, you spiral into fear or self-doubt, and you begin to question your worth or your path. That's because scarcity tells you there's not enough time, not enough chances, not enough of you to overcome what you're facing. It reduces your options and magnifies your fears. But when you shifted your frequency to one of superabundance, you develop a new lens for interpreting challenge. You don't immediately ask, why is this happening to me? Instead, you ask, what is this trying to teach me? Or where is this redirecting me? That shift in perspective changes everything. It takes you out of victim mode and into creator mode. You stop resisting life and instead become curious about it. You also begin to trust that not everything is meant to be easy, but everything is meant to grow you. That belief alone changes your emotional response. Instead of contracting in the face of problems, you expand. You remain grounded. You know that setbacks are temporary and that your alignment is more powerful than your circumstances. People operating from this elevated frequency don't avoid adversity. They rise to meet it. They regulate their emotions more effectively. They're able to hold vision in the middle of uncertainty. They move with intention instead of reaction. And because of that, they find solutions faster. They see opportunities others miss. They remain available to insight, support, and guidance even in moments of pressure. It's not that they never feel fear or frustration, but they don't let those feelings define their next move. They have tools. They know how to reset. They take a breath instead of spiraling. They meditate. They journal, they ask for help, they seek clarity, and most importantly, they return to alignment quickly because they know their energy is the foundation of everything that follows. Challenges become less about defeat and more about refinement. When something doesn't go as planned, instead of saying, this proves I'm not good enough, a person in alignment will say, this experience is making me stronger, wiser, and more prepared for what's next. That attitude of resilience is a signature of high-frequency living. Another shift is the absence of blame. In scarcity, we often look outward, blaming others, the system, the past. In abundance, you take ownership, not in a way that blames yourself, but in a way that empowers you. You say, I may not have chosen this challenge, but I get to choose how I respond to it. That response becomes your point of power. And here's the beautiful paradox. When you stop fearing challenges, you actually experience fewer of them as breakdowns. Instead, they become breakthroughs. What used to shake you now refines you. What used to delay you now deepens your trust and clarity. You become more emotionally intelligent, more centered, and more capable, not in spite of the hard things, but because of them. Living in superabundance doesn't promise a perfect life. It promises a powerful one. It doesn't shield you from storms, but it gives you the tools to remain anchored through them. And in that strength, you'll find something far greater than comfort. You'll find confidence, the deep, unshakable knowing that no matter what comes your way, you will rise, you will learn, and you will grow every time. We've been taught that effort is everything, that if you want to succeed, you must grind harder, work longer, and push through no matter what. While discipline and perseverance certainly have their place, effort alone isn't the ultimate key to transformation or fulfillment. In fact, when effort is driven by fear, scarcity, or unworthiness, it can keep you stuck in cycles of exhaustion and frustration. Real power, the kind that creates lasting, aligned success, comes from alignment. Alignment means you are energetically, emotionally, and mentally in sync with your desires, your values, and your highest self. It's the state of being where your actions are inspired, not forced, where you're not chasing outcomes out of desperation, but flowing toward them from a place of clarity and calm knowing. In this state, you still take action, but it's efficient, focused, and backed by belief, not resistance. When you're out of alignment, even the smallest tasks can feel like climbing a mountain. You doubt yourself, question your direction, and second guess every move. You burn a lot of energy trying to control outcomes or make things happen faster. It feels like rowing upstream, effortful, slow, and draining. This is often where burnout happens, not because you worked too hard, but because you worked against yourself. You worked from a place of misalignment. But when you're aligned, even your biggest goals begin to feel possible, sometimes even effortless. You know where you're headed, why you're going there, and who you are as you move. There's less noise in your head and more certainty in your steps. You become magnetic. The right people and opportunities find their way to you, not because you're lucky, but because you're radiating clarity and confidence. Your energy becomes coherent, and coherence attracts. This doesn't mean you stop putting in the work. It means your energy leads the way. You begin with internal alignment, getting your mindset, emotions, and frequency right before rushing into action. You tune into your intuition. You follow what feels true and expansive, even if it doesn't make logical sense at first. You say no to what drains you and yes to what lights you up, knowing that your alignment is what creates results, not sheer willpower. In this state, time works differently. You might spend 1 hour doing something in full alignment and achieve more than someone spending a week grinding in fear and resistance. That's the difference alignment makes. It doesn't add more hours to the clock. It shifts your relationship with time, energy, and creativity. Alignment also gives you access to deeper intelligence. You become more receptive to insight, ideas, and intuitive nudges that you might miss when you're stuck in over-effort and overthinking. Instead of reacting to circumstances, you respond from a centered place. You act when it feels right, and you pause when it doesn't, without guilt. That discernment allows you to move smarter, not harder. Perhaps the most liberating aspect of alignment is how it redefines success. Instead of chasing external validation, you begin to value internal resonance. Success becomes less about outcomes and more about how something feels. You trust that if something doesn't align, it's not meant for you or it's not meant for you yet. That level of detachment isn't laziness, it's power. It's the kind of trust that creates space for miracles. So yes, effort still matters, but only when it's guided by alignment. Alignment is the blueprint. Effort is the builder. When you move from aligned energy, your actions gain momentum. You're no longer pushing uphill. You're being pulled forward by purpose, vision, and trust. In a world that glorifies the grind, choosing alignment is a radical act. It requires you to slow down, tune in, and listen to your inner guidance. But once you experience the flow, clarity, and ease that alignment brings, you'll never want to go back. You'll realize that you were never meant to struggle your way to your dreams. You were meant to align with them and then let your energy, not just your effort, lead the way.